Well, the Predators beat the Dallas Stars in a good overall game. You can't say that it wasn't at least exciting at the end. We'll talk about how that game went down. Plus, one of the big moments of the game was John Hynes switching up the line, something he really hasn't done a lot of this season. Why did he do that? We'll hear his reasoning and what we thought of the move, plus booing Ryan Suter. There's a big debate over this on Twitter last night. We'll give you our thoughts on that. Is it dumb? Is it fun? Who cares? We'll dive into that today on the Locked On Predators podcast.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is the Locked On Predators podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. I'm Nick Morgan. I'm a writer and editor at ontheforecheck.com, and I have a partner in crime.
You do. I am Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer at ontheforecheck.com.
Games like last night are a lot easier / fun to talk about than our traditional ranting after a 4-3 loss to Seattle.
Yeah, this is going to be a lot more enjoyable, not only for us to record, but also for people to listen to.
Yes. So last night, the Nashville Predators took on the Dallas Stars. Kind of uneventful, but good quality hockey for the first two periods. Dallas scored first on a weird bounce in the third, but then a goal from Ryan Johansen and then a last moment goal from Roman Josi put the Preds up for good. And what's your one word to describe last night's game?
Yeah, so I thought last night's game was a textbook Nashville Predators win. So my word is textbook. This was exactly what you want your hockey game to look like. And let's face it, we haven't necessarily seen it consistently since the All-Star break. But this was a game that had great defense, great goaltending, some really great forechecking, offensive pressure, very good puck possession, very good control of this game. This really was the kind of game that you want to play coming down the stretch and into the playoffs. So for me, this was a textbook win for the Nashville Predators and their style of hockey.
Yeah, the word I was going to use is standard because it's along those same lines. This is kind of the standard of play you want for the Nashville Predators. And it did kind of seem a little bit hairy there, Ann, in the third period. Predators absolutely, I thought, dominated the game from start to finish in pretty much every major aspect of the game. Penalty or power play wasn't great. We'll get into that in a little bit. But I really did. I thought they played a great overall game. But when that weird bounce went in that first minute of the third period, I kind of out of habit thought, okay, here we go again. This is going to be one of those games where the Predators absolutely dominate and do one dumb thing, and that's it. But they push back, and I think that does say something that I think the team is mentally there right now. They're focused on the playoffs. This is the type of performance you need, and I'm not going on here and predicting the Preds are going to win every single game from here on out. But if this is the standard of play from here to the rest of the season, the Preds have a very good shot of making it to the postseason and really battling, I think, too.
Yeah, and I think you hit on something that's very important. And I think that this game really showed mental toughness. And this is something that John Hynes has talked about consistently with this team. And to be honest with you, I think this is one of the main reasons they brought John Hynes in back in 2020 is because this team needed some mental toughness. And I think you saw that in the game last night. Like you said, this game was controlled by Nashville the first and second periods. Now, it was very back and forth, and it was in some ways appeared an even game. But if you look at statistics, if you look at ozone possession time, you would see that Nashville really was in control of this game, and playing well. And then they go down a goal on a freak bounce off of, God bless him, Ellie Tolvanen's elbow, sweet
Yeah.
boy. And you think, oh, and I think it's our automatic reaction, watching the Nashville Predators to go, okay, this is how it goes. But I think this team did a great job staying mentally tough. They didn't overcorrect. They didn't overreact. They didn't panic. They continued to play the exact same game, knowing that this is the best chance we have to win, playing this consistent game. And I think that is a mental toughness piece that the Nashville Predators have needed for several seasons, where maybe they've had the talent, but they couldn't quite make it work. And I think we're seeing the component of that, is something that John Hines really has built for this team.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it a lot earlier this season. There was a lot of games like this where the Predators, kind of on the other end, weren't really in it, but they were hanging around. They were getting outplayed massively by the other team, but they hung in there and found ways to win. And that's something we really hadn't seen during this sort of month-long, I guess,
Yes.
cold snap is the best way to describe it. But it is encouraging that sort of fight was back. And when that first bounce went in for Dallas, that they didn't panic, that they didn't get frustrated. I mean, we've saw that a lot where it's just kind of, rush down the other end of the ice, take a wild shot or a wild chance. They really stuck to their game, and it paid off really with that Johansen goal in one of the most ironic moments of the game. And that, Jamie Benn, let's be honest, probably should have gotten a 5 for that hit, or at least had that reviewed. He
Yes.
doesn't. Matthias Ekholm comes in and, goes up to Jamie Benn, taking issue with the hit. Ekholm got the only penalty on that exchange. I mean, how many of those times have we seen after a bad hit, the players start to tussle and it's like one person from each team? For some reason, the refs didn't do that. But the thing
Yes.
is, we talked about how much the Preds power play struggled that entire night. Instead, they get a 4-on-4 that opens up a lot of ice, and they wound up making a great play that winds with Johansen scoring.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the key there is what you said, it's open ice. This was a very tightly packed game. There wasn't a lot of space in this game. Things didn't just open up for either team until this 4-on-4, and I think Nashville did a great job capitalizing on it. And I want to give a shout out. One of the players of the game for me, who probably isn't going to show up on the stat sheet, is Alexander Carrier. Now, he did get the assist on that Ryan Johansen goal, but that was such a smart play by Carrier to keep the puck where it was and find a way to get it to some open ice, knowing that, Johansen was coming down through. But I think he had some just incredible play throughout the whole entire game, especially in the last kind of waning seconds of the game. He was good at tying up Jason Robertson, who has been exceptionally hot lately. He tied him up net front, didn't give him much chance to get some rebounds in those last, kind of last ditch efforts before the net. So I think Alexander Carrier had a phenomenal game and really did something when that ice opened up. He really took advantage of a little bit of space there. So really great game from him.
Yeah, and that's you mentioned is you need good skaters to kind of take
Mhm.
advantage of open ice, open space. Speed plays a big part of that, and that's a big part of Carrier's game is just how
Mhm.
good of a skater he is. Another guy that I think had a really good game last night, and it's somebody we've been down on a little bit here lately, and that's Ellie Tolvanen. Because
Yes,
Ellie
yes.
Tolvanen, had a really good play, and if you don't believe me, John Hines had him out on the ice for the bulk of that last minute when the Stars had the empty
Mhm.
net, and made a couple of really good defensive plays, including one that, had stopped a Dallas shot towards an open net, which would have tied the game. And that's big for him because the scoring for Tolvanen hasn't really been there a lot
Mhm.
this season, or when it has, it's just been wildly inconsistent. Um,
Yes.
he'd also been demoted sort of earlier this year. Um, so there was a kind of a lot of concern, but over the course of the year, you watch how he's played, and he's been a good, smart player.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, especially in his own end. He's been a very underrated defensive forward for the Predators. And it's good. I think John Hines rewarding him at the end, making a statement that's saying, "We trust you. We
Yes.
want you to go out there and be the shutdown guy."
Mm-hmm.
And him succeeding, I think that is going to maybe give Tolvanen a confidence boost moving towards the end of the year. And that's huge because, as we saw with the line shuffling, he's going to get more opportunities to kind of be more of a high impact guy.
Yeah, and I hate the hockey term snake bit. I just don't like that term. But I honestly feel like it's probably a little bit appropriate here for Tolvanen, but what I like about it is he's been going through this difficult time, finding the back of the net, but he continues to do the other things well, like you're talking about. He continues to play really well defensively. He continues to play hard and heavy game. He continues to play to the identity that John Hines really wants this team to do, even though it's got to be discouraging that he's just not finding the back of the net. And I thought he had some really good looks last night in a game, like I said, that just the shooting lanes didn't just open up in this game. And yet I feel like he really worked at making some things happen. I thought Luke Cunnin did the same thing as well. And he's somebody
Exactly.
that we've
Yeah.
kind of been a little bit down on as far as production goes. And so in a game where there wasn't much space, I feel like Tolvanen and Cunnin were two players that really still were able to generate some solid chances, despite the fact that there wasn't, Dallas wasn't going to give up much, in front of the net or offensively.
Yeah. Well, want to talk about the line changes because that was kind of one of the more interesting things that came out last night.
Yeah.
They seemingly paid off. We'll see if that's a thing moving forward. Also, take a look at where the Preds are in the standings right now. Yeah, because it's March, but it's never too early to start thinking about the playoff push. But first, though, want to mention today's show is brought to you by our friends at Built Bar. This is the time of year that pretty much everybody gives up on their New Year's resolutions, but not this year because I have Built Bar to help keep me full all day long. Have you tried Built Bar Puffs? If you haven't, you're missing out on one of their best tasting bars. Puffs are the first ever protein infused marshmallowy. They're fluffy, marshmallowy, not just a protein bar, they're a treat. And they're covered in 100% real chocolate. They have a lot of different flavors like cinnamon churro, coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie. And if marshmallows not your thing, we get it. They still have plenty of traditional protein bar flavors to choose from, like mint brownie, coconut almond, and for this month only, they have white chocolate cookies and a cream. In fact, they got new flavors coming out all the time. So be sure to check the website often to see what's dropping. No matter what you get, all built bars are low in calories, low in sugar, low in net carbs, and high in protein. Go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order. Again, that is promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. Yeah, we talked about some of the Preds players from last night's game, and the line changes were kind of a big thing. We saw a lot of shuffling. We knew like Philip Forsberg, Mikael Granlund, and Matt Duchene has kind of been the go-to line all season long, but we saw John Hines kind of experiment a little bit.
Yeah, and I have to say this, you hear line shuffling. I think everybody in Smashville clinches a little bit because we've been down this road. But I think John Hines made some very interesting choices. He took Ryan Johansen, bumped him up to play with Forsberg and Duchene, took Mikael Granlund and put him on the second line with Tolvanen and Cunnin. And then we finally had Nick Cousins back. Hey, how about Nick Cousins coming back? So he's subbed in for Matt Luff on that fourth line. And it was really kind of an interesting move with you. There were I didn't know how I felt about this idea because, like you said, this, Granlund, Forsberg, Duchene line has really been a money line for Nashville. And you almost hate to break that up. But I think John Hines really had some good logic and reasoning for switching Johansen into the top line and putting Granlund with the second line. And, I think the results really spoke for themselves. They asked John Hines about this in the post-game press conference and want to let you know what he had to say about that move.
I've liked it. I think that those guys have played well. I think Joey's, with Johansen's back to, you notice him now. He's skating. He's a factor in the game. He's using his size to his advantage. He's playing a fast game, and I think Phil and Dutchy have continued to play the way that they've played. So I like it. The last couple games they've looked good. They've played well. We knew that there was a line that had good chemistry together, so that's nice to see. And I thought Granlund's lines did a heck of a job. I've liked Tolvanen and Cunnin tonight. They were matched against Hintz's line, which has a lot of production. And Robertson came in with back-to-back hat tricks and playing really well. And those guys, I thought they played well against that line. So looks like it's trending in the right direction with some different combos at this point in the season.
I like when he said you notice Johansen.
Yes.
That to me was the line that stands out because you have noticed Johansen a lot and you watch him on the ice. And it's one of those things that I think Johansen is kind of maybe taking a hit because Forsberg's obviously having an incredible year. Duchesne's having a bounce back year. Mikael Granlund has been great as always. His best year as a Pred by far. But this has also been a revival year for Ryan Johansen as well. He's not fallen through the cracks. This is statistically, he's on pace for his best season, overall goal scoring wise since I think 2016, which is when he came to Nashville for the first time. I don't know if he's going to pass his point total from a couple years ago, but he's there. He's doing all the right things. He's setting up plays. He's pretty good defensively. He's really causing chaos for the other team in the offensive zone. And I do think you saw it last night when he's with Duchesne and Forsberg, two guys who are right now on top of their game, two of the hottest players in the Central Division. And you are finally starting to see it maybe pay off a little bit on the score sheet.
Yeah, and I think this has been such a great move for Ryan Johansen. And I give credit to John Hines because making moves can be tricky, but this move also is low risk in the sense that in previous seasons Ryan Johansen's played with Philip Forsberg. Of course, they were the Jofa line with Arvidsson, who's gone. But that there is chemistry between Johansen and Forsberg. They can get on the same page. And I think with as well as Matt Duchesne is playing and as well as he's clicking with Forsberg, this is a pretty low risk switch when you really look at that top line and breaking it up. And I think it's paid off really well. And I agree with you. I think you notice Ryan Johansen now, and not that he's been playing poorly, but I think his game can be elevated. I also love what this does for the second line with Mikael Granlund. I think he is one of those players who makes everybody better. Whatever line he's on, he makes them better. And John Hines pointed out, this was a line that was up against one of the top lines in the Central Division with Hinson, Pavelski, and Robertson playing as well as they are right now. And they held their own. They were able to generate some really good chances. And I think Mikael Granlund is going to be such a help, or is such a help to Cunnin and Tolvanen, who just kind of need that little kickstart in the offensive aspect of their game. It's not like they're not playing well, overall in all of the areas. It's just they're not finding the back of the net. And so I think this is a low risk, high reward decision that John Hines has made. And I think we saw it pay off last night.
Well, you talked about the history between Forsberg and Johansen. How about the history last year with Granlund and Tolvanen? I mean,
Yes.
a lot. You go back and kind of look at Tolvanen when he really got hot scoring. Mikael Granlund was the guy who was kind of there with him, the good old Finnish connection. And it does. I mean, we noticed that a lot from Granlund last year, where it's just he was making a lot of his plays, and it just seemed like whoever was on his line looked sharper, looked a little bit more dangerous out there. And I think that's such an underrated part of Mikael Granlund's game is his ability to elevate others that play with him. And so I do agree. I'm excited to see how this second line works. And I also think this maybe gives John Hines and David Poile maybe a little bit more eye on seeing if they're going to need another forward heading into the trade deadline.
Yes.
It could be a case of, look, Granlund and Tolvanen have had good chemistry. If Tolvanen starts finding his stride, if he starts scoring on some of these chances, maybe that's your depth scoring problem solved right there. Like maybe that's it. Or, if Granlund's really making plays, it's just, Cunnin and Tolvanen can't convert, then I think you can go back and say, okay, look, we need a goal scorer. We need to bring in one more guy. Who is it who can play well and not really disrupt the overall chemistry of the team? So that kind of begs the question, Anne, how do you expect this to kind of be the formation Thursday? Or is this just kind of going to be a
Yeah.
game by game thing?
I really hope that we see it on Thursday because I think that Cunnin and Tolvanen need a couple of games, a couple more opportunities. And I agree with you. I think timing wise, this is a great time to continue with this line switch up. With like you said, this second line could be the answer to a trade question that they've been looking at. Do we need a different second line piece here, a second line scorer? And you look at the chances that Cunnin and Tolvanen had last night, and they were good chances. These were, pretty high danger area shots. They were getting where they needed to be. And, you had Ottinger in net, and he really wasn't going to give up much. And the Dallas defense is playing well, but they still were able to generate some great looks. And I think, man, give this another game or two or three, and it may answer some questions about the trade deadline. You may find that once you get Tolvanen and Cunnin in a situation where they're burying those chances, like you said, it may change the trajectory of Nashville's trade plans.
Yeah. And that's going to be key over the next 2 weeks. I mean, this is basically an audition for those guys to be like, look, we're not just going to be bit pieces. We're not going to be depth players that you put on the fourth line when you need a spark. We can carry this team. That's something I think we want from probably specifically Ellie Tolvanen more than Luke Cunnin. No offense to him, but I think he's just maybe a little bit more dynamic of a scorer.
Yes.
But this is kind of your audition. I mean, this is you had the training wheels kind of taken off you this year. Hasn't gone well this year, but this is your chance. And he's putting him back. John Hines is putting Tolvanen back with somebody we know works well with him. So it's going to be interesting to see moving forward and how long I think this experiment lasts. The other important thing about last night's game was playoff position. And look, right now we still have a month and a half left of the season, so we're not going to have to worry about really who's ahead of who or anything like that. But this is maybe like lap 10 of an F1 race. Like, yeah, you don't need to make your move right now, but you need to stay on pace. You need to kind of make sure you're a little bit faster than the other teams, and then you can start fighting for position. The Predators leapfrogged Dallas into the wild card 1 spot. They have the same number of games played, and the Preds are 1 point ahead of Dallas, so they don't. I mean, basically, your fate's in your hands now if you're Nashville. Minnesota, they're only 1 point ahead of Minnesota, or 1 point behind Minnesota. I'm sorry. But Minnesota's been sliding. So now all of a sudden you're in striking position to maybe gain some ground. And the other thing is, yes, St. Louis is in second place in the Central, and the Preds are only 3 points behind them. And they've played the same amount of games, and they have St. Louis on the schedule coming up. So there's another opportunity to make up some ground. So that to me is going to be the important thing for the Preds. You don't have to worry about, oh, this team is right behind us, or, oh, we just leapfrogged this team. But you need to make sure that you stay in striking position for some of these teams, because the minute, a team like Minnesota, who's slumping right now, the minute they start to slump, that's when over the last month, you can start to gain ground on them. When you have St. Louis on the schedule coming up, that's when you can maybe take a game away from them and beat them. So this is important. All of these games are important for the Predators to keep pace. Again, you don't need to look and see if you're, one spot out of a wild card spot or here or in this position and panic if you're not where you need to be, but you need to keep pace. And I think that's why this next week is so important.
Yeah, this next week really is a huge week in the Central Division, not just for the Nashville Predators, who have a game Thursday against Anaheim, and then they have back-to-backs against Minnesota and St. Louis. So this is a big week for Nashville, but you look at who these teams are also playing, and the Central Division standings from today to a week from today could look very, very different. You have the St. Louis Blues. They're playing the Rangers tomorrow. Then they've got Nashville on Saturday, which is a huge game. You've got Dallas Stars playing the Rangers on Saturday. They've got a couple of days off. We'll see how that affects Dallas. And then they've got the Maple Leafs on Tuesday. You have Minnesota playing the Red Wings Thursday, the Blue Jackets Friday, the Predators Sunday. Each of these, playoff teams in the Central Division, they've got some important games coming up. And these next 3 or 4 games really can make such a huge difference in how the Central shakes out a week from now. And like you said, we're not at the finish line for sure, but this is such a great time for a team like Nashville to continue to play as well as they played against Dallas, and let the other teams kind of do their thing. If Nashville can get, out of these next 3 games, if they can get 4 points, 6 points, that's going to be huge in this Central Division, just going down into, like we've talked about before, an April schedule that is brutal.
For sure. One thing that was interesting last night, we know whenever the Preds play any team with Ryan Suter on it, the Boo Birds come out. It's fine. It is a fine thing. Maybe some misguided hatred on the Preds fans' part, but hey, it's become tradition as much as the "you suck" chants have. There was a debate about this last night, so I handle social media for On the Forecheck, and I tweeted out something innocent. I think we can agree it was innocent.
Nicholas.
I said, you know what? Someday let's have a talk about, Ryan Suter actually being a good player for the Nashville Predators and being able to appreciate his run a little bit. Because, as much as, we say how good Shea Weber was, a big part of that was because Ryan Suter was there. I would argue maybe the best pairing in the NHL for at least the last 3 years that they were together. And that's saying a lot because there's a lot of solid defensemen back then. I meant that as, look, hey, we get it. We know why people boo, but, he was a good player. Let's appreciate that. That for some reason spiraled out of control. That
Nick.
turned into a diatribe about it was trying to cancel booing. Apparently the takeaway from that is that fans are no longer allowed to boo at sporting events. The other takeaway was that we hate Nashville if, we don't boo Ryan Suter. Or the best one was that for some reason, this makes us bandwagon fans who have never watched a hockey game or covered the Preds since before 2017. I have a Mike Dunham jersey at home that will disagree with you.
Yes.
So, yeah.
There is hockey is such a interesting little culture because this is a kind of a classic example of gatekeeping. And, regardless of how you feel about booing, it's last night spiraled a little bit out of control there, Nick. Like that snowball went down the hill and just kept getting bigger. And I know you didn't intend for any of that to happen. But the whole idea, and this is a pet peeve of mine, this whole idea that you're not a real hockey fan unless you've been with the team X number of years, or you remember X player, or you were here when this. Let's just stop that. Let's just stop that. There's plenty of room for everybody to come and be a part of hockey here. So stop with the gatekeeping. The booing, now I'm curious, what is your take on the booing, Nick? Are you pro-boo? Are you anti-boo? Are you ambivalent boo?
It's funny. Like for no other reason that I think it's hilarious. I was at Ryan Suter's very first game back in Nashville and I was eating it up. Like, everybody hated him on the ice so much that it almost became like, this is fun as hell. Like, this is awesome. Yeah, screw this guy.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm not anti-boo at all. I think it's hilarious. Go ahead
Yeah.
and boo Ryan Suter for as long as you possibly can. But I
Yes.
also think, like, and let me try to think about how I want to say this. I don't think booing him should erase the fact that he was a good player, because I think
Yes.
my issue is with people saying now that he left, oh, he was never as good as he thought he was. He
Yes.
never deserved that money anyway. All
Yes.
this and all that. And it's like, look, you can be mad he left and still boo, but also recognize the fact that it's like, you know what? He was actually a really, really good player, which maybe made it suck that he left. The other thing about that is it's still weird to me that he gets away, like, he gets booed every time he touches the puck while Alexander Radulov is on the ice with him, who I would
Yes.
argue was the bigger douche in the scope of Nashville Predators history.
And yet
And
skates quietly by.
screwed over the team not once, but twice.
Yeah.
That, some people are just like, oh, well, he like apologized back in 2015. And also, the last thing I'll say is there's a lot more to the story of the summer where Suter left that I don't think fans either want to talk about or
Yes.
have a warped view. One that involves maybe some negative light on Shea Weber and negative light on David Poyle that I don't think everybody really wants to unpack, because we want Shea Weber to kind of be still the long lost hero of
Yes.
Smashville. That's a different conversation for another day. We don't have enough podcast time to get into that. That's my take on it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not like, look, I'm selective boo. This is where I'm at. Now, Ryan Suter, I did hear that he just likes to think of it as people saying Suter.
Yeah.
And and I'm like, hey, whatever it takes to feel okay with thousands of people booing you, hey, you do that. Now, I do take issue with certain things, and this is just personal. Do not boo PK Subban and
Yeah,
sit
that
near
was
me.
dumb. That whole thing was dumb.
Don't boo PK Subban. Just period, full stop. Don't do it. Now, if Corey Perry's on the ice, I mean, you can throw things, and I would find a
Yeah.
way to excuse your behavior.
Yes.
So I am a very
you can riot on the ice.
Oh, take the catfish and aim when it comes to somebody like Corey Perry. Pull a pecorine and aim. But yeah, there was a lot of drama last night around the Suter boo, and it was something to sit back and watch. Nick, you navigated it well, but woo, was that a whole thing?
It was a whole thing. Luckily, let's not have to worry about that for the rest of the season, because the Predators are done playing the Dallas Stars.
Yes.
The only thing, I'm not even going to try to put this into the universe. Somebody said last night, just because of all of this, I would actually legitimately laugh if Philip Forsberg signed with the Minnesota Wild in the offseason.
Oh gosh.
And I had to be like, you know what? I would hate my life, but I would also laugh at that, because that would be a fantastic troll.
Yes. Yes.
Let's hope that doesn't happen anytime soon.
Yes.
So yeah, the Nashville Predators tomorrow night take on the Anaheim Ducks. We'll have a preview of that tomorrow. Also a big game this weekend against the St. Louis Blues. So a lot to look forward to moving on for this week. It's going to be a big week, a make or break week. So be sure to stick to Locked On Predators. We'll have it covered every day. And where can people find your work when they're not listening to us?
You can find my work at ontheforecheck.com, and you can find me on Twitter at AnnK_Mama on Ice.
You can read That was a hard word to say. You
It
can read
happens.
my work at ontheforecheck.com. Follow me on Twitter at _NSMorgan. Also, be sure to follow the podcast at LO_Predators. If you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to like this video, leave a comment, let us know what you thought of the show, or if you have a topic you want us to discuss down the road. That is going to do it for us on today's Locked On Predators podcast. Thank you for making this your first listen of the day. We will be back tomorrow. See you guys.